It's in some ways the command line actually works better.
Here's the syntax. Looking for the port 3306. And then we go search. And what this will do is it'll show us every system in the world that has port 3306. And presumably it has MySQL running behind it. This 4.6 million.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Yaniv Hoffman, back with another video and back with a significant guest, Master Hacker, Occupy the Web.
Thank you, Yaniv. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be on your channel.
Likewise, happy to have you here. And if you're not familiar with Occupy the Web, he's an author of some exceptional books. The first one, actually I have them here, Linux Basic for Hackers, a must book for everyone that is interested in Linux and want to become an hacker or want to learn more about cybersecurity. Speaking about hacking, the next book is Getting Started, Becoming a Master Hacker. This one was chosen as one of the top 5 cybersecurity books of all time and the top 100 malware books of all time as well. So definitely exceptional. And the last but not least book is Network Basic for Hacker, which is the foundation of everything and very close to my heart as I started my career in networking. With that said, Occupy the Web also has a school for ethical hacking called Hacker Arise, and I will leave the link in the description. And I have a voucher for you, a discount, 20% discount on everything in the shop of Hacker Arise in the name of Yaniv, Y-A-N-I-V. So please use it, check it out, definitely cool. And Occupy the Web, in the last video we spoke about active reconnaissance, specifically about Nmap. What we are going to speak today?
Well, what we're going to do today is we're going to do one of the initial stages of a penetration test or a hack. As most people who are in this industry know, that the first stage of doing any type of penetration test or hack, we can talk about maybe the distinctions between those, but a penetration test is simply when you choose to have an outside hacker to do and test the security of your system, right? And that's where they try to hack into your system to understand what the vulnerabilities are in your system. That's a penetration test. Hack is where somebody probably, sometimes legally, sometimes illegally. So for instance, in cyber warfare, a hack is, quasi-legal. If you're been asked by your government to hack into another government's servers, then that's legitimate and legal to do. So tactics and the techniques are going to be very similar no matter what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And what few people recognize who are new to the industry, and I think we're talking to people who are relatively new to the industry, is that reconnaissance is really, really key. That means that, like in the military, you have to go ahead and find out information about your target. And the things that you're looking for are what operating system are they using? What websites are they using? What services, what ports are open? What versions of services? What applications are they running? Who are the important people within that organization? Because very often the attack is going to involve some element of social engineering. Right? That's almost always the case, although it's underappreciated by people who are new to the industry. The people who are in the industry recognize, I think the number is somewhere over 80% of all attacks include some social engineering, which includes, right now we're dealing with the big, the company in the U.S., we're dealing with a company in the U.S. who offers software as a service for the car dealers in the United States. And they've been hacked. This is called CDK Global. And they've been hacked and they're being ransomed for $50 million, right? Now, ransomware is in simple terms, is simply somebody getting into your system and then encrypting all of the data. But the key, encrypting the data is not that difficult to do. Getting into the system is. And most often, okay, they're getting in through some social engineering. We don't know the details yet about this system, but it's probably involves some social engineering. Somebody got social engineered to get into the system. And that requires some work to understand who the people are and what their proclivities and interests are. But what we're going to be doing today is using a tool that nearly everybody in the industry uses, and that's Shodan. Shodan was developed by a young man out of San Diego called John Matherly. And John figured out that he could go ahead and pull the banners, okay, on almost every IP address in every port in the world and put it into a database, right, that you can then search. And he's been very successful with this and made a very successful business. This is legal. This is reconnaissance. He's pulling the banner. So what does pulling the banner mean? That means that, say, for a website, almost every website, you can pull the banner which announces to the world certain information about who they are. So, for instance, a website will tell you what version of HTTP it's using. It will tell you what the operating system is, what the web server is. All that information will come in the banner. Other services will do the same. So what he's done is just gone around, pulled the banners on all of these millions of websites. I guess there's 4 billion IP addresses, right? But there's even more than that websites. And he's gone ahead and pulled the banners wherever they're available on each one of the ports on those systems, right? And then he puts it all into a database that allows you to search, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at it, right? Now, there's 2 ways that you can use Shodan. One of them is through the web browser, and one of them is through the command line. And we'll look at both of them here today. All right, so let's do that. All right, here's our friends at Shodan. You can see I have a few other things open here as well. But let's focus on Shodan right now. So I just go into Shodan.io Explore. If you don't open an account, you're limited in how many searches you can do and the results you can do. He allows you to go ahead and open up a free account. And with the free account, you can't do unlimited searches, but you can do a lot of searches, right? So we're going to make sure you open an account, okay? And then, of course, he does have the capability of buying his services, the firm services here, but we're going to focus on the free services here. All right. So what we can do is, well, you can see here that he has opened up, it says Explore, right? And you can explore various things that you can find, okay, on Shodan, right? So for instance, you can find industrial control system, which is one of the specialties of Hackers Arise. We do a lot of work in industrial control systems, databases, network infrastructure, video games, and of course, one of the favorite things people have to look for on Shodan is cameras, okay, or open cameras, right? Let's go and look for, we know, for instance, that MySQL, which is one of the most common databases in the world, right, is it's the most common database on the internet. Not the most common database in the world, but it's the most common database on the internet. MySQL uses port 3306. We know that, right? So what we can do is we can look for port, okay? And here's the syntax. Looking for the port 3306. And then we go search. And what this will do is it'll show us every system in the world that has port 3306. And presumably, okay, it has MySQL running behind it, right? Mm-hmm. Let's go ahead and do click on it, and it'll give us this 4.6 million, all right, where most of them, greatest number are in the U.S., China, okay, and other nations, right? So this is going to show us now, it's not necessarily going to show us okay, every MySQL. It's going to show us every MySQL that's using port 3306. And really what it's looking for is port 3306 open. Now, some very savvy security engineers will sometimes move the port to a different port. So this is the default port. That's an important distinction to make. This is the default port for MySQL. One of the other ways that we can search for MySQL, we're just using MySQL as an example, right? We simply go look for MySQL. What we're looking for now is that when it pulls the banner of any site, it's looking for the word MySQL. Let's see what we come up with there. All right. And we have fewer sites, right? 3.398, right? These are almost all, you can see right here, it says MySQL. Okay, that's the banner. This is the banner right here that is pulled. All right, and it shows us the version. So there's a lot of information here. This is an old version. Okay, you can see it says end of life product. Okay, so database, they have these tags that describe what they think it is. Okay, it's based upon some heuristics of the site, just looking at various characteristics of the site. But this is an old version of MySQL, right? So now if I were, a malicious hacker, all right, I would say, hey, this is an old version of MySQL. This probably has a lot of vulnerabilities in it. And I could go to the vulnerability database and start looking for various attacks against this particular version of MySQL. This one's in the U.S. This is probably a big server farm in Ashburn. You can see it says cloud. Okay, this one here. So we get a lot of information. Now, if we wanted to narrow our search down, we can either click over here by country, or we can just go country. The syntax is going to be country, or let's go FR for France. Just pick on the French for no particular reason. And we see we got 58,000 of them in France, right? Even in the banner here, it's telling us it's in Ubuntu, right? So we get a lot of information, okay? Now, we can get even more information by continuing to work. Say we wanted to know which of these are running on that Windows, right? So we can go OS Windows, and we can, and this is going to show, there's only 11 of them in France running on Windows. So we can get really, really specific, okay? And this one here, you can see it has remote desktop enabled, okay? Right. Now, if I were doing a pen test on this, all right, this is something that I would worry about. These are the accounts that came when they pulled the banner as an admin, Apache HTTP, Tomcat server, base SQL. So we're getting a lot of information about the each one of these machines. And we could go to, and then click on this specific system, right? This one says end of life, so it's an older, looks like it's Windows. It says right here, Windows 8, and the OS build 396. So, this is how much information we can garner pulling the banner on the site. Let's go ahead and click on it and get more information. And I'm not picking on anybody in particular. You can see that it shows us what ports are open. 421, 80, 443, 3389. So, as you know, port 21 is FTP. It even tells us what version of FTP, what application of FTP, FileZilla. There's HTTP, HTTPS, and of course 3389, which is remote desktop. Right? And remote desktop has had its share of problems, right? One of the things that Shodan also does for us, okay, is it shows us what they think, okay, based upon certain characteristics, what they think the vulnerabilities are. And in this case here, you can see that this one has a current vulnerability here, 2024-0727. This is an open SSL problem, it looks like. Right? Then it has a few others. Now, I will warn you, looks like we have the HTTP reset attack, the one that you and I talked about recently, right? It looks like it says this is 2023-45-802. This is the rapid reset attack, right? So this website it's telling us it's probably vulnerable to this type of DOS attack. The HTTP true rapid reset basically allows the attacker to send almost unlimited amount of requests to the site and basically DOS the system. And it's here. Now, it's important to note that for anybody who's new to the industry, this is great that they have these CVEs over here. That's the Common Vulnerability and Exploit Database, the CVE. This is where all of the vulnerabilities are cataloged, and you can go to them. I think just click directly to them. Nope. And it'll tell you, we could go and search on Google and get this and get more information about, but they've given us a bunch of information. The important point that I want to make here is that this is an estimation. It's not necessarily definitive. Right? It's their best guess. And oftentimes, like anybody's best guess, it's often wrong. And these are often wrong. But it gives you some clues as to what potential vulnerabilities there are. So just don't get frustrated when you find out that they're not actually real. There's a lot of false positives, and that's true in our industry in general, no matter what you're doing. If you're running an IDS or what have you, you're going to find a lot of false positives. Let's say this. We looked for Windows OS. Let's go for say, let's look for if there's any systems running Solaris with MySQL and in France. So we're looking for MySQL, country France, OS Solaris. Solaris is an older Unix variant that was developed by Sun Microsystems back in the 80s, and then Sun got purchased by Oracle, and they now call it Oracle. Nothing's coming up there. Let's go, let's look for BSD. All right. BSD is another Unix version. No results there either. Mm-hmm. And then last but not least, our favorite is Linux. And we'll see how many of those we have. There we go. We have 6. Okay. Sometimes we're looking for information that's in the banner. So when you're doing these types of searches, you have to check to see what's in the banner. Because sometimes, for instance, if you're looking for Ubuntu, right? Ubuntu is a version of Linux, but it won't say Linux. It'll say Ubuntu in the banner. Lots of key information that we can recover about a particular site. One of the things I mentioned is that at Hackers Arise, we do a lot of industrial control system security and hacking. And one of the most common ports that you'll see being used in that industry, and we're talking about an industry where you're talking about factories and oil refineries, manufacturing, they're using port 502. Might not be familiar with because it's it's kind of obscure. These industrial control protocols are different than the ones that we're used to using. And so this would be Modbus's default port. And if we click on it, we see there's over 500,000 systems. Once again, that doesn't mean necessarily that they're Modbus, but it's a good place to start, right? You can see there's a bunch of them here, no data returned, to have 502 open. They may not be Modbus, all right? You can tell, here's one right here. This is the signature of a Modbus system. This one is in the United States and Blossburg. I don't know where that's at. You can see it says right here, ICS, all right? So they've tagged it as an ICS system. That's industrial control system. And these are the signatures that you'll see on the banner pulls for this type of system, all right? And we can go ahead and click on this. And by the way, everything that we're doing here is legal, right? Shodan has been in business for, almost 20 years, I think, now. And they've never had any legal problems because they're just doing scanning. Scanning is legal and legitimate. It's part of the recon process. And so we're not breaking into any systems. We're simply
totally passive. It's not that we are penetrating and now searching for the information inside.
Right. So what we're doing, right here is passive. But what Shodan does is actually active. Because they're actually scanning and then they're putting it into a database for us. So we don't have to send any packets to the system. We can see what somebody else has gathered for us. So this is obviously a Modbus system. It has port 502. You can see this is a very familiar signature for Modbus system, Modbus-based systems. It has no other ports open. That's the only port it has open. All right. And that in itself is a little bit unusual, but we can look at some others here. We might have some others. Oftentimes you'll see, port 161 or others. Often there'll be a port 80 open. We can just copy this IP address and your browser will automatically try port 80 and 443. But if you want to go to a different port, you have to tell it. All right, so that's what we're going to do here. And we're going to tell it to go to port 81 with a colon, okay, and port 81. And then it comes back and tells me it's a bad request. It's sent to HTTPS. It also tells us a little bit of information about the web server, okay, and the operating system. This is what reconnaissance is all about. Right? Reconnaissance is about gathering information. Attacks, exploits, okay, whatever you want to call them, hacks are not generic. Right? There's not like one silver bullet that's going to take down every system. Well, let me back that up a little. Once in a while, there is a silver bullet. And a good example of that is Eternal Blue that I detail in my book, Getting Started and Becoming a Master Hacker. That was a silver bullet. Right? That was developed by NSA to take down any system, any Windows system. Okay, wouldn't work against Linux and Unix system, but any Windows system. And we haven't seen a silver bullet since that. Most exploits are very specific. It's been around for a while. There's no problems with any legal stuff with it. It's going to work for you. But it's limited to giving you the banner. Those people who are on the defensive side, right, might take note of this, is that you can suppress the banner so that the banner isn't displayed. So one of the things you want to do if you're on the defensive side is to run Shodan against your own servers, okay, and see what information you're giving to the attackers. And then once you know that, start working to reduce that information. Right? You want to give as little information as possible to your attackers. I mean, even your error messages should be limited so that the attacker, because error messages oftentimes will give a lot of information about the back end components. Right? So this is a good tool for both sides, the red team, the blue team, the offense, the defense. This is going to put all the information into a single place for almost every IP address, every port in the world. Not everyone, but pretty close to everyone. So RTSP is a protocol that's used by cameras around the world, okay? And, we got 5 million of them, okay? And so you can see they've got 5554, 555. So this company it's in Brazil, and it tells us, is at least smart enough to try to hide. It probably, when they bought this product, it set itself up as port 554, but they moved it to 5554 so that people like me don't see it, don't recognize that it's a camera, right? But if you've been around the industry, you learn some of these things, and this is common for them to keep the 54 at the end, and just move it to another port. So it's one of those things that a little bit of experience teaches you, right? And that's part of what we sell at Hackers Arise is our experience. There's lots of the things that we can do, and there's lots of good stuff. I mean, sometimes people say to me, it's a common thing people will say to me, it's like, well, nobody still uses Windows 7. Right? Nobody uses that. And I'll say to them, nobody in your world uses Windows 7, but there's a lot of Windows 7 still out there, right? And there's a lot of others, old operating systems too. But one of the things that it'll help us do is it'll find those Windows 7 systems, okay? So we can find them. So if we're looking for like really old, outdated systems, let's see if we can find any. Now, this isn't going to find every Windows 7 system. It's only going to find Windows 7 systems that are actually connected and hosting something on the internet. You can see that not only can we find it, but we found who the administrator's name is right here, right? And so they're running, this case here, this is running port 3389 remote desktop. It's also using SMB version 1. That probably means that it's vulnerable to Eternal Blue, right? Because that's the version that's vulnerable to Eternal Blue. This is a lot. Yes, somebody has failed. It tells us it's the end of life OS, so it tells us that it's an out-of-date OS. And these are the telltale ports, okay, for SQL Server. Okay, these are the ports, and they're running SQL Server 2000. Right? Old, a very, very old service. Very out of date. I'm not sure why they're still doing it, but they are. This is built with, right? And it's a company that tracks the technologies that are being used around the world and all the websites. And so if you're trying to find out what a particular company is running, there's a lot of ways of doing that, right? I mean, and these guys have they have actually a plugin that you can put in your browser. So as soon as you go to a website, you know what they're using. But one of the things that they do, and this is now a paid site, it used to be free. It's a paid site, but you can still get some information from it for free. So like, for instance, right here, it'll show you sites that are running WordPress 6.1, which I think is the current one right now. But it'll also show you the old ones. Like, for instance, this is really, really old. This is like 20-year-old WordPress. And it'll show you, okay, how many sites are running it, okay? It'll show you, where the data is coming from, United States, Germany. It looks like there's 209,000 is what it's saying. Let's look at, say, the U.S. And this will show me some of the sites, okay, that are running this very, very old WordPress. Now, so this is something, once again, that if you're on the defensive side, you want to make sure that you're not on this list or you update your WordPress. But from the attacker hacker, this can show systems that are very vulnerable to attack, right? So that's another tool. And then one other thing I wanted to show your viewers, and that is that we can use Shodan. Here we use Shodan through the browser. You can also use Shodan through the command line. And sometimes using it through the command line can be a lot more useful.
There is no difference between the command line to the GUI.
Right. It's some ways the command line actually works better because you can download and save and parse the information in ways that you can't through the browser, and then put in the API key. So when you sign up at Shodan, they'll give you a free API key. Then I can go ahead and go search, all right, and go say port 502 that we were just looking for, and it'll go ahead and it'll show me, okay, all is this, it shows me all of the systems using port 502, all right? And let's just go Shodan-H so you see the basic commands of using Shodan command line, but it's really an excellent tool. So here we just use the search, okay, parse the information. We can look at what my IP is. Here's the init that I just used, okay? Here's the info about account, we can check the honey score. So this is a way to check to see whether or not that system that you're scanning might be a honeypot. And so let's go ahead and just check out, say, one of those IP addresses that we just looked at. All right, just as an example, here's one right here. OMC Computers and Communications in Netherlands. Okay, and let's get the IP address, and we'll just use that IP address. And then we're going to go host, and then we'll go that IP address. Okay, that's 45. And once again, I'm just picking these out at random. I don't know what information we're going to get ahead of time. No search results available. And we should probably try another one. Why did it come up with no? Oh, I know what it is. I can't put the search and the host together. Okay, so it's searching for the word host. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so now it goes ahead and gives us some basic information, and you can see that in this case here, this is a telltale sign that it's a honeypot for me, at least. This particular Siemens Cymatic S7200 is commonly used as a honeypot. It tells us there's 3 ports open. It shows us each one of the ports. Okay, and let's maybe try.
Dated yesterday, 25th. We are filming in 26th of June.
Well, my date is 25. Remember that. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So I'm in 25.
Yeah.
You're in 26. And sometimes, though, it's an important point, though, that sometimes this information is dated. It can be old. It's one of the weaknesses of Shodan is that sometimes they can't scan every IP address every moment. Sometimes it can get a little dated. Let's try this other one here that's in Canada and Prince George and see what we can find out about it via the 206 116. And of course, you can output this to a file, for a report. If you have to report to the CISO or whoever you're reporting to about your particular site. Okay, there you can see it comes back and tells us the ports that are open and the services that are running on it without ever touching the system. All right, so we're getting a lot of information, nicely formatted, nice colors. And of course, if we were just looking for various characteristics of systems that might be vulnerable, we could put this all into a file and save it to a file. Oh, let's go back and do our search for port 502. Put the colon in there. 502, and then country, say China. Okay, and then we can go ahead and send that out to China Modbus TXT. And so what is done now is to put all of those into a file. Then we can go ahead and say more. And of course, once we have it in a file, we can do all kinds of work on that file and save it, of course, there it is. There's all of our information in a nice text file on all these systems in China that meet this criteria. Right? So in many ways, the command line will work better for us than especially. So generally what I will do is I'll go and use the browser to find specific information about some machines, and then I'll go to the command line and then do a similar search and then store it into a file like you see here.
Right.
And then once I have the file, I can parse it, I can do work on it, I can use it as an input into something else. So that's kind of a real simple, quick overview of Shodan. It's one of the most valuable tools for passive reconnaissance that every penetration tester, hacker should be aware of. And of course, the defensive side should also be aware of it because of the information that it can reveal to you about what the world knows about your systems. what the world knows about your systems can be used against
you. So I think with that said, this is great, definitely for everyone that is entering this field. This is what is called Shodan is the search engine for hackers. And what we have done here from our side is, as you emphasized rightfully, it's a passive reconnaissance. And Shodan is indexing the internet-connected devices, and it helps many security professionals detect vulnerabilities and map the network assets without direct interaction, which provide also critical insight. As we saw, there are many things here you can learn on the connected devices, on the organizations that can help you in the pen testing. And what we are doing here is, again, only for educational purposes.
only for educational purposes.
Yes, exactly. I think this is a must for everyone, in every organization to look and map, search their organization's assets to make sure they are not exposed to bad guys, as we say. So again, for everyone that want to learn more, please go into Acca Voy's site, community school. You can be exposed to a lot of material, knowledge, and experience. And until the next one, Occupy the Web. See you, everyone, and thank you very much.